and welcome to the Full Scottish here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride, and I'm joined today by two of our favourite guests here. I've got Sam Paton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign on this side of me, and I've got Andrew Wilson from All Under One Banner on this side. And how are you both this morning?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Kenny?
I'm not bad. Andrew, how are you?
Kenny, good morning. I'm well. How are you keeping?
I'm not bad. It's good to hear that you're both healthy. That's the important thing at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Speaking of which, we quick coronavirus update. A total of 20,798 people in Scotland have been tested. Of these, 17,453 tests were confirmed negative, and 1,245 tests were positive. Sadly, 218 patients in Scotland have now died from the coronavirus infection. First of all, I should have said right at the beginning, if you want to join the conversation here on the Full Scottish, if you've got anything to add to any of these stories, then please do join us on Twitter. You can follow us at Broadcast Scot, and you can join the conversation using the hashtag Full Scottish. So Andrew, coming to you first. How's your throat and everything? You feeling you're not infected yourself yet?
No, there's no sign of any symptoms here, thanks, Kenny. No, everyone in the house is well.
Excellent. And Sam, how are things at your end?
At the moment, we're all fit and healthy, and managing to plod through it. Eating too many snacks is probably the biggest problem at the moment we've got. Yeah,
but at least you don't have to. You don't have to be dressed up nicely for this. You can just slob about in your jammies and you can totally get away with it. You could be doing that now. We wouldn't know because we can only see you from the neck up.
Well, I have actually got my t-shirt on and I have a pair of joggy bottoms on underneath. Oh. This just seems to be the way, isn't it? Wear joggers and things and then something smart on top.
Yeah. So on coronavirus issues this week, I mean, obviously it's what's dominating the news for all of us just now. This week we saw the new hospital, the Louisa Jordan Hospital, opening at the SEC. We've seen some issues around testing. The testing which the UK government said was going to be ramped up massively this week, and as yet it hasn't been. We saw promises of 30,000 ventilators, and so far they've managed to get 30. What's jumped out at you this week, Andrew? What's been the kind of big story of the week for you as far as the virus goes?
I suppose in addition to the testing point, I think what we've heard from the Cabinet Secretary, Jean Freeman, during the week is the successful increase in the number of ICU beds in Scotland. I think the ambitious targets that were set to quadruple, as I understand it, the number of ICU beds is a big ask, but as I understand it, they're about halfway to that target. And if we're able to achieve that, that's going to continue, I think, to support the comparatively low mortality rates that we're seeing with COVID-19 in Scotland.
What's been your take on the naming of the hospital? I mean, we got a huge uproar from some of the more Zoomery end of the unionist spectrum, including former MP Douglas Alexander. What did you make of that response?
I think it shows how tenured they can be. I'm not entirely sure why Douglas Alexander still gets any coverage at all. That Louisa Jordan was born in Maryhill, 2 miles from the SECC, makes it absolutely clear why that's an entirely appropriate name for that establishment as it's built up. And at the same time, as you say, from the more extreme ends of the unionist twittering classes, I'm certainly bear in mind that Florence Nightingale was born in Florence. She wasn't born in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, Louisa Jordan was a First World War nurse. I mean, it's not like she wasn't British. She just happens to have been Scottish as well. So one of the more bizarre instances of unionist action. Sam, what's jumped out to you this week? What's been your kind of I don't want to say highlight of the week, but what stories have jumped out at you this week?
Oh crikey, there's so much happening. The Louisa Jordan Hospital being named, I thought that was a great positive. To see that one of our local ladies from Glasgow being commemorated, and that was absolutely lovely. I was watching it live, and it was lovely to see that happening. Unfortunately, yeah, there's people that have kind of tried to ruin that positive, and it's petty school ground behaviour. And as you said yourself, Kenny, yeah, she's Scottish, but from the sense of the unionists, she's also British, and yet they had a big problem with this. And then for certain politicians to jump on that bandwagon, to me it was they were trying to get themselves a bit of airtime. Maybe they feel as if they're being forgotten about at the moment. I don't know whether reasoning why that happened, but the politician side of it. But no, it was just so petty and school ground behaviour. To see one of our own, a local lady from Glasgow being commemorated, I think was just such a positive thing at this moment in time, because we're hearing so many bad news stories. So yeah, we need to take the positive where we can.
Yeah. Now we did have a big story emerge just yesterday when the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Catherine Calderwood, was photographed at her second home in Fife. She'd gone there with her family, apparently, overnight. Now, she has issued a statement. She said, I wish to apologise unreservedly for the issue reported in the media today. While there are reasons for what I did, they do not justify it, and they were not legitimate reasons to be out of my home. While I and my family followed the guidance on social distancing at all times, I understand that I did not follow the advice I am giving to others, and I am truly sorry for that. I know how important this advice is, and I do not want my mistake to distract from that. I have a job to do as Chief Medical Officer to provide advice to ministers on the path of this virus and to support the medical profession as they work night and day to save lives. And having spoken with the First Minister this morning, I will continue to focus entirely on that job. Andrew, this clearly sets a terrible example. This is the Chief Medical Officer, the person who's supposed to be leading the campaign to stop this virus, and yet she's broken all her own guidelines and arguably broken the law here. What do you think about this? And do you think an apology is enough?
Most certainly I do. I think that this kind of story, filling the pages of the Sun, it reflects as much on the Sun as it does on the Chief Medical Officer. I think there will have been circumstances in the background that prompted her to make this journey and to do what she did. I think from the statement that's been issued this morning, it's clear that she wishes to apologise, shut it down, and move on and get on with rather more important things. I am minded that there will be reasons and justifications for people to make trips like that, not in groups, so for example, I'm aware that people are becoming concerned that the insurers are not being clear about whether properties that are lying empty and are not being visited are or are not insured, and whilst it's only property, people understandably are concerned. By the same token, I would have hoped that Dr. Calder would have been able to take some advice and get some assistance to deal with whatever it was she was trying to do, and without putting herself in the firing line like this. She doesn't need this. She doesn't need these kind of distractions, to be honest.
And Sam, I mean, this obviously it's being used by some in the media and some political opponents of the SNP as a way to attack the Scottish government. When many of those same people were happy enough to excuse the Prince of Wales when he came north against all advice. What's your take on this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We're not excusing what she done, but there's going to be certain circumstances where we're going to make decisions, and they're going to be the wrong choices. Especially the now, just now is such an extraordinary thing. It's happening. Nobody could have envisioned this, and there's going to be people who are going to break the law, so to speak, to carry out certain tasks. Does that make them bad people? But yeah, you're right. The same people that are turning around and kind of banging the war drums and things are the same people who made all the excuses for the Prince of Wales. They're the same people that made all the excuses for the UK government with their head immunity and all the kind of lies that they've been telling. And that has been blatant. That's just not a bad judgment of circumstances or character. We're all going to make, nobody's perfect. We are all going, especially at the moment, we are all going to make some decisions that maybe afterwards we're going to kind of sit back and think, shit, shouldn't have done that. But I think we need to just kind of calm down a bit. And yeah, she done it and she shouldn't have done it. She's apologised, and we need to move on.
Mm-hmm. In other news, we've heard the youngest victim of the coronavirus this week, 5 years old. I think this was south of the border, but 5 years old is by some margin the youngest victim we've heard of so far. What do you think about this? We're seeing talks now about how we get out of this crisis. But when people of all ages are dying, Andrew, how soon do you think we can start thinking about these sorts of things, about how we do get out of this?
Well, the impression I get from talking to people is that we're still very much in the stages of dealing with the current crisis. Exit planning or exit committees, I'm sure, will be starting. However, I get the distinct impression that the scale of the impact in all sorts of different ways on our daily lives and on society in Scotland is so significant that most effort is being directed at that. I'm thinking of, for example, the challenges that we are aware of in the social care sector, with carers, the workforce of carers being significantly reduced due to people being ill or being isolated. And also we're hearing stories now of the prison service being significantly reduced in its workforce at the moment for the same reasons. So I think that in terms of the priorities, dealing with those immediate challenges is likely the top of the list at the moment. I think also we, around the world, we are not yet close to understanding this particular coronavirus, let alone how we can defeat it. And so I think until we get a proper handle on the medicine and the science, I think planning for the exit is probably going to be fairly high level, at least for the moment. The medical issues, for example, why does it affect different people in different ways? There are a number of theories that I'm aware of, but until we get that ironed out, and I'm sure given the resources which are being deployed around the planet, we will get to that. But until we have that, it's going to be difficult to put really concrete exit plans in place.
Mm-hmm. And just our final coronavirus point. Don't want to give this one too much time, but there's an old lady that's going to speak to the nation this evening to tell us all to take pride in what we've accomplished in fighting off the virus and all this other jingoistic stuff that she tends to come out with. Sam, are you expecting to be inspired and comforted by the words of Elizabeth Windsor?
Well, put it this way, I won't even be watching. The thing is, at the end of the day, lead by example comes to mind, and when you've got someone who is basically taken off, away hidden, and got her minions of staff to look after her, well, the rest of us are basically living the this new existence. Nah, sorry, but I won't even be watching. I probably won't even look at what happens tomorrow or anything like that. So no, I'm not really kind of interested in what she's got to say, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I still just can't get over her disappearing off to Windsor when, during the Blitz, the King is still in London was always the thing.
Yes.
But during this, I mean, it's not going to be difficult to isolate yourself in a 100-bedroom Buckingham Palace. She should have been perfectly safe there. But as we've seen, the royal family like to get out and about when there's a crisis like this. But anyway, we do have to move on. And there is other news. Yesterday, we saw the election of a new Labour leader, Keir Starmer, with 56.2% of the vote. Beat out Lisa Nandy and Rebecca Long Bailey from kind of opposite extremes of the party. Starmer is generally known as a moderate, although he's got a long history as a lawyer and a prosecutor of generally being on the right side of issues, working with unions. I believe he worked on the McLibel case, and as a prosecutor, of course, he was involved in finally bringing the killers of Stephen Lawrence to justice, which was a really big moment for particularly for Londoners and Black Londoners especially. Andrew, coming to you first then, what difference do you think Keir Starmer can make to the fortunes of the Labour Party?
Well, I think we'll certainly see. We haven't yet seen the mainstream media really start to attack Starmer yet. I'm sure that they will. So we'll see his mettle being tested in that way. However, I think that what we will see is an absolute chasm of difference and distance between the leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister, this time in terms of effectiveness and clarity of purpose and clarity of communication. I think it will just serve to make the Prime Minister look even more idiotic than he already does.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, coming to you now, what's your feeling? Have you got any strong feelings about Keir Starmer?
No, I haven't. He's not somebody, as I was saying in the show during the week, none of them really kind of jumped out at me as being kind of any kind of opposition. But I guess time will tell. It'll be interesting watching what's going to happen now, if he is going to be able to and will be a proper opposition, because we don't have that at the moment, and that's the problem. The government's not really being held to account. Mm-hmm. And it's all this kind of jokery and theaterism and things. So yeah, I need to. It'll be interesting to watch. And it'll be interesting, as Andrew says, how he's going to cope when the media starts. At the moment, they've been quite nice. So how he's going to cope, how he's going to deal with that. So yeah. Time will tell. I'm going to wait to kind of sit back and watch and listen, and then I'll make my judgments on Keir Starmer. But at the moment, yeah, I'm just going to sit back and watch and listen.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting. I think certainly as a parliamentary performer, he's likely to do a better job than Corbyn. Corbyn, I've always felt, especially at PMQs, was just very, very weak, often choosing the wrong kind of lines to take. Yeah. Whereas as a lawyer and as a very strongly pro-European person, Keir Starmer, I think, is likely to pick on better lines to attack Boris Johnson on. Richard Leonard said today that Keir Starmer gets Scotland, Andrew. He will now be supported by another election result. Jackie Baillie became the deputy leader of Labour in Scotland. What difference do you think that will make to the Labour setup in Scotland? Do you think appointing Jackie Baillie deputy leader is the turnaround that Scottish Labour has been waiting for?
Personally, I don't think it will at all. I think the appointment of Jackie Baillie just indicates that the Labour Party in Scotland continues to be dislocated from Scottish people, dislocated from what the electorate wants, has nothing new to offer, and is still banging a drum from the 1970s or earlier, and has failed to reform and has failed to move on. And I don't think appointing Jackie Baillie will do anything other than underline how the continuing irrelevance that the British Labour Party in Scotland has become.
Yeah. And Sam, this Jackie Baillie working with Richard Leonard. Richard Leonard, of course, very much a Corbynite, very much from the left of the party, an old school union man. Jackie Baillie, of course, comes very much from the right of the Labour Party, very heavily pro-nuclear weapons, very staunch unionist. Do you see them becoming an unstoppable force, uniting left and right to take down the evil SNP?
I know Jackie Baillie very well because obviously she's my MSP for this area, and I have worked with Jackie in a lot of campaigns. And she's very staunch unionist. They are not going to make. They are just not getting Scotland at all. The amount of conversations that we've had with Jackie, even with the Save Loch Lomond campaign regarding independence and things, they just don't get it. They are still kind of, as Andrew says, they're this old rhetoric. They don't get the modern day thinking, what people get, why people are wanting independence. They just don't understand it. So I don't see them being any form of opposition to the SNP at all. It's not there. They're too weak in the sense that they don't get why we want independence. They're very much of the old British unionist rhetoric. But personally, in terms of Jackie, and I mean, I know, well, she's helped me out quite a lot. Even when I had domestic abuse situations, Jackie was one of the first ones that were in there helping out. So that's why she does get voted in our area. It's got nothing to do with her unionist views. It's more to do with what she does that people don't see off camera. Mm-hmm. And we keep saying to her, why don't you leave Labour and just stand as an independent? Leave Labour. There's quite a few of us that keep kind of urging her to leave Labour. Mm-hmm. But no, she's it's not going to change. I would love Jackie to come out as an independence supporter. Absolutely love her to come out. I'm anti-nuclear, but that's the problem. She's not. She's very much for the fast lane base, which is it's a blight on our society. It's just along the road from us. We've got to deal with the convoys coming through. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a way of life. We've got to deal with these big nuclear convoys and things. And we've got to deal with all the kind of military traffic. It comes up and down from the base. And it can be quite scary and daunting. It would be good to get rid of the nuclear base. There's other ways that base could be used and utilised. Again, we've sat and had conversations with Jackie about, kind of get rid of the nukes and stuff. And there's other ways that the base could be used and create jobs as well.
Of course,
But it's just, Jackie's just not for changing her mind, but no, I don't think they're going to be a threat at all to the SNP. Definitely not. They're just not getting Scotland, and Keir does not get Scotland either. They don't get Scottish politics. They're still so caught up in the British politics, which is a bygone age.
Yeah, well, we will, of course, have to see. Keir Starmer is due to start announcing his reshuffle today. He's expected to replace John McDonnell as Shadow Chancellor. He's also expecting to pick a shadow Home Secretary and a shadow Foreign Secretary today. So we will look out for that later in the day. I'm sure Gordon will be discussing it on the full on Scotland at 7 tomorrow. But now we move over to the United States, where Donald Trump is continuing to just go wild after weeks and weeks of terrible leadership on the coronavirus. On Friday night, he sacked the Inspector General of the US intelligence community, Michael Atkinson. He was described by Democratic Senator Adam Schiff as decapitating the leadership of the intelligence community in the middle of a national crisis. Atkinson had stood by the whistleblower who blew the whistle on Trump's involvement with Ukraine that led to his impeachment and his Senate trial that, of course, he got off with after Senate Republicans decided he was basically immune from anything. But this has caused a lot of people, particularly Democrats, obviously, and other voices in the intelligence world, to really heavily criticize Trump for his behavior. Andrew, coming to you again. Trump has really kind of shown just how incompetent and unaware he is of the world during this coronavirus crisis. What do you think? What kind of difference do you think it makes to people to see him now, crossing names off his enemies list, getting people somebody that he says he never actually met, saying that he did a terrible job and he had to go and he's got an absolute right to sack him and that's all there is to it. What difference do you think this makes?
Well, I think there's a number of elements here, Kenny. Certainly we're seeing from the president a consistent approach. He says that climate change is a hoax. He said that the way in which his telephone conversations with the Ukrainian government were hoax. He said that coronavirus was a hoax. So it's clear that he's ploughing his own very individual furrow with regard to so many things and so many existential threats that there are. He's showing the very narrow and very, I would almost put it, he's continuing to operate the White House as if some kind of mafia family, putting family members in charge of very serious matters. And as you say, removing people who are perceived as having slighted him or being against him, despite their independent status and despite the importance of their roles. So much of the Inspector Generals, of whom there are many, so much of their role was instituted after Watergate. It is precisely to protect and to prevent presidents breaking the law and to detect them breaking the law that the Inspector General's structure was introduced. And so to go around sacking them, and in particular ones who had been doing their job, they are required by law to listen to whistleblowers and to report what they are told. And so removing him, it indicates that, again, that, as I say, that Trump is operating as a capo, some kind of mafia operator, and it's underlined even more. I think the leader in the New York Times on Friday, I think the headline was, Jared Kushner will kill us all. And that was on the basis that Kushner apparently is the president's son-in-law, has been given significant responsibility in the White House for coordinating the White House's response to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the notion that a property developer, and not a very good one, now is in charge of the White House's response to such a serious threat is on the one hand, it is indescribable, but on the other hand, it is consistent behaviour from the president.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he's a property developer, not a very good one either, and he's in charge of the whole country. So there is that issue. And Sam, as Andrew was saying, these inspector generals were brought in after Watergate to try and provide some general oversight of various government departments. And this is another instance of Trump basically taking out people who provide oversight, people who are there to be a counterbalance to the president's authority, or at least to have some check on the president's authority, and he keeps getting rid of them and then replacing them in not in this specific case, but in several other cases, he's replaced people with acting roles so that they don't have to go through the formal approval process. How concerned are you about this kind of breakdown of the system of government in the US under Trump? The way that he's tried to kind of remove all opposition to his untrammeled power.
Put it this way, the man's sleek it. He's very sleek it. He's finding a way around everything, isn't he? And he seems to have a kind of history of being able to find a way around kind of different kind of loopholes or whatever. And this seems to be a continuation. And yeah, as Andrew says, he's running the White House like a mafia family, you know. And these people were put in place, as you said, to counterbalance his authority, and that was a safety net. And these are all being removed. I know in the past I've called him delusional and things like that, but it's actually very concerning how sleek he is, in order for nobody to be able to question his authority. America at the moment, it's becoming more and more apparent. I don't know if this was it's becoming more undemocratic, with Trump at the power of the helm of the White House, where, he is, anybody just, challenges anything that he does is just being removed. And it's quite concerning. It's very concerning. If I was in America right now, I would be highly concerned, because where's democracy disappearing to? Because it seems to be, just kind of filtering away without people actually noticing what's happening.
Yeah. It's an ongoing story. Obviously, for 3 years now, we've been looking at Trump and wondering, what was next, what he was going to do next. I think the fact that this is happening while the coronavirus crisis is going on, the fact that he's still, so busy settling personal scores, certainly has to be a worry for a lot of people in the US. We will obviously keep an eye on that story as it progresses. But on a more general level, an ongoing crisis in the UK just now is Brexit. It's been off the agenda quite significantly for the last couple of months as the focus has grown on the coronavirus epidemic. But Ian Blackford MP has written to the Prime Minister saying basically we need to pause things. We didn't expect the coronavirus crisis to emerge, and now that it has, we can't expect the December 31st deadline for negotiations with the EU to be concluded, and therefore we have to put a pause in place. Of course, Boris Johnson was elected in December on a mandate to get Brexit done. He has repeatedly said December is the absolute red line. There can be no extensions beyond then. But at this stage, with no guarantee that we're going to be able to, we're going to be out of this lockdown by the summer, there's no guarantee then that there will be time to negotiate properly. Andrew, what do you think about the state of Brexit at the moment? Do you think there is any possibility that Boris Johnson will decide to have some sort of pause, some sort of delay on the deadline?
I think it's very unlikely, Kenny. My own feeling is that the approach that Johnson was taking, and in particular by setting a very short period of time to conclude the negotiations with the EU before the 31st of December this year, I think that date was always was never a realistic date, and it was always a significant threat that we would be back to the stage of a no-deal exit from the EU, given that the Prime Minister's advisers haven't yet changed, and I think we'll wait and see just how much difficulty Dominic Cummings gets into as a result of all of the reported information relating to his approach to the coronavirus pandemic, and how it very quickly became apparent that his view that if a number of pensioners die, then so be it, that approach was wholly inappropriate. So I wonder the extent to which Cummings still holds sway in Downing Street, if he still holds sway, or if others who are the same jihadist, the same fundamentalist approach to Brexit, if they are still in place in Downing Street, then I think the prospect is that they have never cared about the negotiations that you would expect to take place, and they are dead set to pursue their goal of a no-deal Brexit, and that will continue. Having said all of that, and Ian Blackford was absolutely right to send a letter to the Prime Minister, the notion of the kind of economic shock which the no-deal exit, which the fundamentalist Brexiteers want, the notion of the economic and cultural shock that will bring on top of what has happened this year so far, which has been unprecedented, that kind of double shock, the implications are almost beyond description.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, one of the points that Ian Blackford raises in this letter, he says, "We are not asking you to change your views on Brexit. We are simply asking you to recognise reality. It's simply impossible for businesses and others to prepare for a life outside the EU while coping with the impact of COVID-19 at the same time." So, as we've talked about numerous times, there are serious impacts on business from the coronavirus. Lots of businesses are really struggling. There's every likelihood that more businesses are going to shut down, and yet we're now quarter of the way through the year. In fact, almost a third of the way through the year, and we have no progress on Brexit yet, which is just setting these businesses up for another big shock at the end of the year. What do you think of that kind of recklessness from the government?
With Ian Blackford, I think it was such a common sense letter to send. It had to be sent. Every bit of common sense is kind of telling me and other business people around Scotland that, yeah, okay, we need to accept Brexit's going to happen. We might not be happy with it. But however, this is just not the time and place to be thinking about it and doing it. We need to deal with Corona. That's certainly at the forefront. But Johnson seems to be, and Cummings seem to be taking kind of advice. I'm going to say advice or leadership skills from Donald Trump, where they're on their own path. They don't seem to be interested in how it affects the rest of the UK. They're very much on this, it's like a kind of tunnel vision. And I think they are heading for a no-deal Brexit. And it is very, very reckless is not even a strong enough word for it, and what they're doing. I don't think they're actually foreseeing or caring what the impact it's going to have on the UK as a whole. We're struggling at the moment with coronavirus and getting supplies to people in certain areas and communities. I know there's a lot of areas and communities that supplies are returning back to normal, but even where I live, we're still struggling to get certain supplies. So there'll be certainly a lot of rural parts of the UK who are still going to be struggling right now. And then to bring in Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, it's economy suicide, really. I don't know what they think they're going to achieve through this. I would love to know what they think is going to be the end game, the end result from, kind of spearheading of a no-deal Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, Boris Johnson, of course, famously is alleged to have said "F business" when told about business concerns about Brexit. He seems to believe that the political upside is more important than the political upside of going hard on Brexit is worth the economic cost. We will just have to keep an eye on that as it develops. But now we turn to a really sad anniversary. It's 28 years today since the beginning of the siege of Sarajevo during the conflict in the former Yugoslavia. During that siege, which lasted 3 years and 10 months, 5,500 civilians were killed, almost 9,000 soldiers between the two sides. 521 children were killed. 51% of children in Sarajevo during the siege are believed to have seen somebody killed, and 39% seen at least one family member killed. A really horrifying time in relatively recent history. We had somebody on Holocaust Memorial Day. You can look up in our archives that episode where we spoke to somebody who was a victim, or he lost his family in a massacre during that time. Andrew, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you're not an expert on Balkan politics, but what do you think about this anniversary? How should we be remembering the siege of Sarajevo and the crimes that were committed then?
I think one thing that immediately crossed my mind as you were talking there, Kenny, we were talking about the reckless approach of politicians in the UK. And I think one of the things that characterised the political events that led to the events in Sarajevo and across the Balkans at that time was recklessness. Again, recklessness with regard to international law, recklessness as with regard to people's lives, recklessness as to what the implications would be. Thankfully, in some senses, the international community addressed that recklessness, and some individuals were brought to justice. That in some tiny way addresses the broad impact on the population that the atrocities and the violence in those wars saw played out in front of people's homes and through their lives. So I think I'm certainly reflecting on the reckless approach that politicians take and the implications that recklessness has, be it in the current crisis here or in the crisis that there was 20 years ago in the Balkans. I think we really ought to reflect very carefully on the lessons that should be learned from those events, how fragile democracy can be, how quickly our institutions can be either disregarded or can be turned to suppression and violence and illegal purposes. And I think it's something that we don't reflect on sufficiently across Europe. I think Europe still is, whilst maybe not in denial, is certainly very anxious and is uneasy when talking about the events. I think there are still some legal proceedings carrying on with regard to the conduct of the Dutch army during the UN peacekeeping activities there. And so we haven't yet, I don't think, properly understood or properly learned lessons that we all must take in terms of protecting the institutions, in terms of preventing reckless politicians, and also in terms of recognising and commemorating those who were killed.
Yeah. And Sam, as Andrew was saying there, Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic both sentenced to life for crimes against humanity during that siege and during the war in the Balkans more generally. How are you feeling about this anniversary?
I agree totally everything that Andrew said there. I think we do need to kind of sit back and reflect, and we kind of need to kind of take stock of what's happening just now. And the thing is people need to talk about these events in order for educate. And I think at the moment what's happening around the world at the moment in terms of the recklessness of politicians we're seeing in so many governments, we need to talk about it. We need to educate the younger generations of, if politicians are not held to account and how quickly things can turn and these atrocities then happen. It's just kind of take some time and reflect and kind of, and just basically just teach the younger generation that they need to be holding politicians to account. And when they're voting, not to be as reckless and think about who they're voting for, because especially at the moment with what's happening with us and with the coronavirus and how reckless our government, as in UK government, has dealt with the situation. I mean, that could easily turn, and it could easily turn ugly. If it's things are, it's just no. Yeah. It's. I remember 28 years ago, I was living in Germany at the time when it happened, and it was a scary time. It's certain, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah. On happier news, though, there is another big anniversary this weekend, the 700th anniversary of the Declaration of Arbroath, one of the founding documents of the Scottish state, the document that established the concept of the sovereignty of the Scottish people, and a document that went on to influence other important documents in history, like the American Declaration of Independence. Now, Andrew, you were organising an All Under One Banner event at Arbroath to mark this. That was due to happen yesterday. Obviously, we couldn't congregate there without, maybe taking a royal with us to make it okay. So, first of all, obviously, as I say, you're disappointed with the not being able to have the event take place. What does the declaration mean to you, and why did you think it was necessary to have a big event in Arbroath with the All Under One banner?
I think, Kenny, I certainly know how disappointed a huge number of people are that we, for understandable reasons, have not been able to gather in Arbroath this weekend. There were a range of events planned, cultural, celebrating democracy, and demonstrating demands for self-determination and independence for Scotland. Two items which are certainly important threads in the declaration itself. And I think that that continuity between such a striking and important document 700 years ago and the wishes and aspirations of the people of Scotland today, I think that similarity and that connection is very important, and that was part of why we were keen to celebrate. I think it's clear that people's appreciation and understanding of the Declaration of Arbroath has increased in recent years. I think for a very long time it was a document that quite literally was kept in a cupboard and didn't figure widely. However, the appreciation of its importance and both in terms of the Scottish state and the Scottish people, but also in terms of the development of political thought and political theory in Europe and then the world is very important. And so we were also very mindful that in the past the anniversaries of the signing of the Declaration have been rather more subdued and rather more irrelevant events in the past. I think I'm reminded of the story of Wendy Wood standing up in one of these previous events in Arbroath Abbey and accusing those who were leading the commemoration of being hypocrites. And so I think it was very important for the independence movement and for the people of Scotland to be able to participate and celebrate such an important document. And certainly we were expecting it to be a very large event and to get attention across the UK and worldwide. So we lost that opportunity this year. We will certainly are planning to organise a march in Arbroath next year because this event deserves to be marked. And I think also it shows that what actually happened yesterday with a succession of online events, a digital rally in the afternoon, Leslie Ruddock's film of the Declaration of Arbroath being published in the morning, and then the 700 Live Ceilidh hosted by Broadcasting Scotland last night. I think that shows the determination of the Scottish people to mark the event, and it shows again that the independence movement it operates in the real world, so it reflects real world events, but it is not going to be suppressed. The determination of the people and of the independence movement to be heard and to succeed was not bowed by the results of the last referendum, and it is not being bowed by the current crisis that we are enduring at the moment.
Yeah. And Sam, as Andrew said, this was celebrated in various ways by Broadcasting Scotland and others. We had all sorts of events happening online yesterday to try and mark the event. But the BBC has got no documentaries about this. I'm reminded of the events 5 years ago for the anniversary of the signing of Magna Carta, which has a similar sort of place in English history, and there were a series of events all year in the Westminster Parliament. There were commemorative coins, commemorative stamps, a whole host of broadcasts on the BBC, and now we do have the Billy Kay programme that he's produced for Radio Scotland, and there was a discussion on Radio 3 which I listened to the other night and was just appalled by. But what do you think is why do you think it is that the BBC is not willing to cover this with the same depth as Magna Carta? And as I say, they have this similar kind of role of constraining the power of the king in world history.
There's a lot of things I can say about that, but I don't think I can say it live on TV. So I'm going to keep it simple. Basically, it's all about suppression, isn't it? They don't want to commemorate anything that's to do with Scottish culture unless it fits in with their rhetoric, and the Declaration of Arbroath doesn't fit in with their grand scheme of things. So therefore, celebrating the Declaration of Arbroath is it's something. It's hard to put into words, isn't it? It's more of a feeling, and the BBC don't want to get involved in that. But however, they're quite happy to celebrate Rabbie Burns, which I find quite ironic. But however, only they can answer that one, why they're willing to celebrate Rabbie Burns every year. But it obviously fits in with their ideology of some sort, or trying to twist the ideology. But yes, it's just crazy. The Magna Carta, I'm kind of keeping my opinions to that to myself. But no, very much, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't surprise me with the BBC or any of the mainstream media. Anything that seems to be pro-independence is off limits, isn't it? They don't want to be seen to be promoting independence under any shape or form, or the will of the Scottish people under any shape or form. Crikey. What would happen if they came out and started, supporting Scottish independence, or be seen to be supporting Scottish independence? We've seen what the backlash was like during the week with the Louisa Jordan Memorial Hospital. Yeah. So what would the backlash be like if they'd done something on the Declaration of Arbroath? Oh, crikey. would there have been fireworks? It'd be good if there was fireworks, because we could have added to the celebrations.
Yeah, fireworks would have been grand, but I was actually just about to say we started and finished the show today talking about the weirdness of the British media in dealing with English things versus English or British things versus dealing with Scottish things, even when those Scottish things are also in some sense British. That is why Broadcasting Scotland exists, and we would urge all of you, if you're able to, please do support Broadcasting Scotland. We produce the full Scottish, we produce Scotland at 7 through the week, but we also do things like 700 Live last night, the 2-hour Kayleigh. It's still online, you can go and have a look at it. A lot of good turns in there. These are the kind of things that we'd love to be able to do more of with Broadcasting Scotland, but we can only do that with your support. So if you are able to support us financially, please do go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. Sign up as a supporter there, and your £5 a month can make a big difference in the type, the quality, and the quantity of programmes that we can produce here. We do, of course, have a special news. Are we still there? Sorry, we technical issue there. Sam Paton is going to be hosting our new afternoon show, which is going to be coming up very, very soon. I'm very much looking forward to that. We had a wee sort of test run the other day, and it went very well, despite Sam having to fill a lot more time than she was expecting to. So if you're able to support us financially, please do. If you're not, don't worry. The shows will always be free to view online. But you can also support us by following us on social media at Broadcast Scot on Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook, and you can share the shows around. Let people know about Broadcasting Scotland. Let them know what we do here and why you enjoy the shows. That's the only way we can spread the word about what we're trying to achieve here, which is to create a full spectrum, full service TV channel, independent, in Scotland and for Scotland. That's the whole point, and we can only do that with your help. So please do help in whatever way you can, and if you're willing to get involved here in some way as well, whether that's as a journalist, whether it's as a techie, or as a host like Sam and me, then you're also very, very welcome to get in touch with us. There are lots of jobs to be done here. We just need people that are willing to give us a wee bit of their time and help us drive Broadcasting Scotland forward. But that is all we've got time for today. So I'd like to thank Sam Paton once again. Sam Paton once again. Sam Paton. It's very odd. I forget what side's which here. And Andrew Wilson as well for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have both of you. And thank you at home for joining us as well. Gordon will be back tomorrow at 7 with Scotland at 7. I'll be back on Tuesday. But until then, have a great Sunday. We'll see you again soon.